Right now, at this exact moment, the power grid is one major event away from going down. A cyber attack, a solar flare, a cascading infrastructure failure, and just like that, everything you depend on stops working. No lights, no refrigeration, no internet, no way to pump gas or withdraw cash. Now, ask yourself honestly, what do you actually have? Most people picture themselves reaching for their emergency kit, feeling calm and prepared, but here's what actually happens in a real grid collapse. Within 6 hours, specific items, not the obvious ones, not the ones everyone rushes for, disappear completely from every store within driving distance. Not because of mass panic, because a small group of people who understand something the majority doesn't move quietly and deliberately before anyone else even realizes what's happening. 13 items, 6 hours. After that, the window closes. And one of them, item 7, costs almost nothing, takes 5 minutes to prepare, and is something almost nobody does. Yet in a real grid-down scenario, it could matter more than everything else on this list combined. By the end of this video, you're going to know exactly what these items are, why they disappear so fast, and how each one gives you an exponential advantage when the people around you are scrambling. Welcome to Crisis Horizon, where we give you the knowledge that actually keeps you ahead of what's coming. If this is the kind of content you've been looking for, hit subscribe right now and leave a like. It costs you nothing, and it helps us reach the people who need this before they need it. Let's get into it. Here's the first thing you need to understand about water in a grid collapse. The moment an emergency is announced, every single bottle of water in every grocery store, gas station, and big box retailer within miles disappears. People fill carts, then cars, then they start fighting over the last cases on the floor. The water aisle becomes a war zone within the first 2 hours. And while all of that is happening, the people who actually know what they're doing walk straight past that chaos to a section of the store almost nobody thinks about, the pool supply aisle. What they're looking for is pool shock, specifically calcium hypochlorite granules at around 68% concentration. It comes in a small bag or bucket, it's inexpensive, and at first glance it looks like it has nothing to do with survival. But here's what makes it one of the most powerful items on this entire list. One standard bag of pool shock can purify approximately 10,000 gallons of water. For a family of 4, that's nearly 14 years of drinking water. You treat it the same way municipal systems treat public water. A tiny fraction of a teaspoon per gallon, allow it to sit, and it's safe to drink. That's it. Now compare that to bottled water. A case of water is maybe a few gallons, lasts a few days, and weighs a significant amount to carry or store. Pool shock, by contrast, stores indefinitely when kept sealed and dry, fits in a cabinet, and provides water security on a scale that no amount of bottled water can match. The people who understand this aren't panicking in the water aisle. They already solved this problem weeks or months before the emergency arrived. Now, once water is handled, the next crisis almost nobody prepares for properly is sanitation, and this is where things get genuinely dangerous, because in a grid-down environment without running water, personal hygiene isn't just a comfort concern, it becomes a medical one. Infected wounds in a scenario without hospital access can kill you. Diseases spread faster when basic hygiene breaks down. This isn't an exaggeration, it's historical fact documented in every major disaster scenario. So where do prepared people go? Not the survival aisle, the baby section. Unscented, sealed multi-packs of baby wipes become one of the most critical items you can own. They allow you to maintain full personal hygiene without a single drop of water. They clean wounds without the need for running water or sterile equipment. They help regulate body temperature during heat stress by cooling the skin. They handle surface disinfection for food prep areas and basic tools. And the reason experienced preppers specifically seek out the unscented variety is important. Scented wipes contain additives that can irritate or inflame open wounds, turning a helpful tool into a liability. The distinction matters enormously in a high-stress situation where you can't afford a wound to worsen. Stores never market baby wipes as emergency gear. There's no reason for the average person to associate them with disaster preparedness. That's exactly why they're still on the shelf when everything marketed as emergency gear is long gone, and exactly why those in the know clear them out within hours. The third item in this category is one that almost never gets mentioned in any prepping context, and that's a shame, because it might be the most versatile single dollar you can spend on emergency preparedness: a large sealed box of baking soda. When people hear baking soda, they think cookies. What they should think about is a compound that replaces up to 8 different emergency products in a single box. Baking soda cleans wounds when sterile saline isn't available. It handles dental hygiene, brushing your teeth, when there's no running water or sterile equipment. It suppresses grease fires and, critically, electrical fires, which standard water should never touch. It controls odor in enclosed spaces where waste management becomes an issue. It functions as a mild surface disinfectant. It can soothe digestive distress when medical access is unavailable. It adjusts the pH of water in certain purification scenarios, and it can be used to clean skin and hair when bathing isn't an option. 8 functions, 1 box.
The people who understand this don't buy it out of panic. They buy it out of quiet, deliberate knowledge. And because nobody associates baking soda with emergency preparedness, it's available long after the obvious items are gone. Let's talk about something that most survival content glosses over completely: the physical reality of moving through a crisis. Whether you're sheltering in place or evacuating, you are going to be doing things with your hands and your feet that you've never done before. Moving debris, handling sharp materials, walking distances you're not used to, working in conditions that are wet, cold, dark, or all three at once. The gear that protects your body's most essential tools, your hands and your feet, is the difference between being functional and being incapacitated. And the items that provide that protection vanish fast. Start with contractor bags, not the standard household garbage bags you have under your sink. Those tear under real stress, hold minimal weight, and offer almost no protection from the elements. What you want are 6mm black contractor bags, the heavy-duty variety used on construction sites. A single box of 10 costs just a few dollars, and the applications in an emergency are almost unlimited. You can convert one into a rain poncho in under a minute. Just cut openings for your head and arms. They function as a waterproof ground barrier for sleeping in wet conditions. They collect rainwater. They manage waste when sewage systems are down. They protect gear from moisture during transit. They can be used to construct emergency shelters when layered and secured. And unlike standard bags, they can sustain real physical stress without splitting. This is a case where the specific grade of the item determines whether it's actually useful or just a placeholder. Experienced preppers know the difference, and that knowledge is what sends them to the right shelf while everyone else grabs whatever's available. From the feet up, wool socks. And this one sounds almost too simple to matter until you understand the mechanics of what happens to your feet in a survival scenario. Cotton socks, which is what most people own, absorb moisture and hold it against your skin. In normal daily life, that's mildly uncomfortable. In an evacuation scenario where you're walking miles over uneven terrain, it creates blisters within the first few miles. Those blisters become open wounds. Open wounds in unsanitary conditions become infected wounds, and at that point, what started as the wrong choice in footwear has become a serious medical problem that limits your ability to move, which in a survival situation is one of your most critical assets. Wool behaves completely differently. It regulates temperature in both cold and warm conditions. It resists odor through natural antimicrobial properties. Most importantly, it insulates and protects even when completely wet. A wool sock that's soaked through still keeps your foot functional. A cotton sock in the same condition is actively working against you. Sporting goods stores run out of wool socks within the 4th hour of a real emergency. 3 pairs, owned before you need them, eliminates an entire category of vulnerability. Now for something that sounds almost too ordinary to take seriously, but shouldn't be underestimated for a single second: superglue. Specifically, cyanoacrylate, the compound that forms the basis of medical-grade tissue adhesive used in actual field surgery.
When a clean laceration needs to be closed and sutures aren't available, cyanoacrylate is the clinical solution. It seals the wound, forms a durable physical barrier against contamination, and holds under physical stress in a way that standard bandages simply cannot. Medical professionals have used it in field conditions for decades precisely because it works. A $2 tube from any hardware or pharmacy counter outperforms $20 of standard first aid supplies for acute wound closure. And beyond medicine, it bonds broken gear, reseals boot soles that have separated, repairs containers, and extends the life of tools and equipment that would otherwise become useless. It doesn't register as a panic item. Most people walk right past it. That's what makes it available, and that's what makes it one of the smartest grabs on this list. If you could only take one item from this entire video and it had to cover the widest possible range of emergency applications, the answer would be duct tape. But only the right kind. Original silver fabric-backed duct tape, not the plastic film imitations that look identical on the shelf but perform completely differently under stress. The fabric backing is load-bearing. It withstands moisture without peeling. It maintains adhesion under temperature changes. Plastic film versions, by contrast, lose adhesion within hours in wet or cold conditions, and they tear unpredictably under tension. With the real version, you can patch structural shelter damage and restore waterproofing. You can repair cracked or broken containers well enough to use them again. You can apply it directly to the skin on high-friction areas before walking to prevent blisters entirely. You can close wounds in situations where nothing else is available. You can splint broken bones when combined with rigid materials. You can seal broken windows to protect against weather or debris. This is the item that separates a real kit from a decorative one. The distinction is invisible on the shelf and enormous in practice. And then there's a category of injury that almost nobody accounts for until it happens to them: hand injuries. Cuts, abrasions, punctures from handling sharp debris, metal, broken materials, or tools under stress. In normal life, you get a cut on your hand, you wash it, you bandage it, maybe you get a stitch or...
In a grid-down environment with no medical access and compromised sanitation, a hand infection follows a very different trajectory. Leather palm, cut-resistant full-finger work gloves are the prevention. Synthetic gloves compress under grip and fail to protect against cuts. Leather palm construction provides real cut resistance while maintaining dexterity. Full finger coverage protects areas that fingerless gloves leave exposed. Hardware stores lose their entire glove inventory within 3 hours of a serious emergency. The people who buy them aren't thinking about comfort. They're thinking about keeping their hands functional in a situation where their hands are their most important tools. Heavy-duty, commercial-grade aluminum foil closes out this section, and it's worth being specific about what that means. Standard kitchen foil tears easily, provides minimal structural integrity, and is designed for light use. Commercial-grade foil is a different product, thicker, more resistant, and actually capable of the applications that matter in a crisis. Wrapped in multiple layers, it creates a basic Faraday cage for small electronics, protecting them from electromagnetic interference in certain failure scenarios. It can be formed into functional cookware for direct heat cooking when pots and pans aren't available. Its reflective surface makes it a viable signaling tool in open terrain. Layered and secured, it provides heat reflection for insulation in shelters. It functions as a water collection funnel when formed into a cone shape, and it creates airtight wraps for food preservation when refrigeration is gone. The instruction here is simple: buy the grade, not the look. Commercial foil withstands real conditions. Kitchen foil is a prop. Everything covered so far handles physical survival: water, sanitation, shelter, mobility, repair. But there's a dimension of crisis survival that gets almost no attention in mainstream preparedness content, and it may be more important than any of the physical supplies combined: coordination, information, human connection. When a grid collapse happens, it doesn't just cut the power, it cuts communication. Cell towers go down or become overloaded within minutes. Internet access disappears. The systems that allow you to reach your family, your friends, the people you depend on, all of it goes silent at once. And this brings us to item 7, a printed contact book. Write down or print every critical phone number and address you rely on,
every family member, every close friend, your doctor, a trusted neighbor, anyone whose location or phone number you would need in a real emergency. Put it in a waterproof sleeve. A basic document protector costs about $1. Keep it somewhere accessible. That's it. That's the entire preparation. And here's why it matters more than almost anything else on this list. Studies and anecdotal evidence from every major disaster scenario tell the same story. The average person can recall 2 or 3 phone numbers from memory. Everyone else, every contact, every number, every address, exists only inside a device that requires power and network signal to access. When both of those are gone, the digital contact list inside your phone becomes completely inaccessible. You know people you need to reach. You don't know how to reach them. You're physically separated with no way to coordinate, no way to confirm safety, no way to organize resources or plan a meeting point. A printed contact book eliminates that entire category of vulnerability for $1 and 5 minutes of preparation. It's the single highest leverage action on this list relative to its cost and effort. And the reason it deserves emphasis isn't just practical, it's that almost nobody does it. In a culture of complete digital dependence, the idea of writing down phone numbers feels unnecessary right up until the moment it becomes the only option left. Now, assuming you can reach people or that you need information about what's actually happening outside your immediate surroundings, the next item becomes critical: a hand crank AM/FM radio. Most people assume they'll use their phone for emergency alerts. Others have battery-powered radios as a backup. Both of these fail for the same reason. They depend on infrastructure or stored power that runs out quickly in a prolonged grid collapse. A hand crank radio requires neither. You generate power manually and it's ready to use. What makes this especially important is the nature of AM broadcast infrastructure. AM towers operate on independent backup power systems designed specifically to maintain emergency broadcasts for extended periods, in some cases weeks. Emergency frequencies, weather alerts, evacuation orders, safety announcements, this is where that information lives when everything else is down. The hand crank radio is the only reliable pipeline to that information without depending on cell networks, internet access, or battery reserves. People who understand this acquire them ahead of time. Everyone else discovers the need for them after the stores are empty. From coordination and information, move to food, and specifically to the smallest, lightest, cheapest protein acquisition system you can carry. A 30-meter spool of monofilament fishing line at 20-pound test and a pack of standard number 8 hooks. Combined, they weigh under 1 ounce. Combined, they cost under $2. They fit in a jacket pocket. In a grid-down scenario, commercial food supply chains collapse quickly. Stores are emptied within days. Hunting requires equipment, licensing, and skill sets most people don't have ready access to. Fishing, by contrast, is accessible wherever there's standing or moving water, requires almost no physical exertion, and can provide sustainable caloric intake with minimal resources.
Beyond food acquisition, the fishing line has a secondary application that experienced preppers value highly: tripwire perimeter defense around a campsite or shelter. Strung at ankle height between trees or fixed points, it creates an invisible early warning system that costs nothing extra and adds a layer of security with zero additional weight. Calorie density per dollar invested, this kit is unmatched, and because it doesn't appear on any standard preparedness list, it remains available long after the obvious supplies are gone. High-proof spirits, a sealed bottle of vodka or whiskey at 80 proof or above, is the item that consistently raises eyebrows on preparedness lists and consistently proves its value to anyone who thinks through the actual applications. As a wound antiseptic, it functions when commercial antiseptic is unavailable, which happens quickly. As a fire accelerant in wet conditions, when starting a fire with damp wood is the difference between warmth and hypothermia, it becomes invaluable. As a barter currency, it has no expiration date, requires no refrigeration, and is recognized and desired universally. In any disruption scenario, regardless of scale, spirits function as stable exchange value when paper currency becomes unreliable. And there's a dimension that preparedness content rarely addresses honestly: morale. Extended high-stress situations create psychological pressure that degrades decision-making, cooperation, and resilience.
A small, measured use of spirits in a controlled adult context serves a legitimate function in managing the psychological weight of a prolonged crisis. Liquor stores see their shelves clear within the first 2 hours of any major emergency announcement. The people buying aren't all stocking up for drinking. Many of them understand exactly what they're acquiring and why. Which brings us to the final point, and it's not about any specific item. Everything on this list shares a common characteristic. None of it dominates the mainstream conversation about emergency preparedness. None of it gets heavily marketed as survival gear. None of it triggers the same mass panic buying behavior that empties water shelves and clears out flashlights and batteries. These items disappear because a small number of people, operating on real knowledge rather than reactive fear, move quickly and deliberately before the crowd even knows there's a reason to move. The gap between them and everyone else isn't money, it isn't access, it's information, and specifically information acted on before the moment it becomes necessary. The pool shock is already in your cabinet or it isn't. The contact book is already printed or it isn't. The wool socks, the contractor bags, the crank radio, you either have them or you're looking for them in empty stores alongside everyone else. This is what preparedness actually means. Not a list of gear, not a reaction to fear. A set of deliberate decisions made in advance, grounded in the understanding of how emergencies actually unfold, and what the first 6 hours really look like for those who were ready and those who weren't. If this gave you something to think about, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to Crisis Horizon for more of this kind of content, practical, detailed, and built on knowledge that actually matters when it counts. We'll see you in the next